20 years. You're looking live right now. Kensington Palace fans have created a memorial to pay their tribute to the ageless Princess Diana, as they like to say. 20 years, almost to the hour, really, of that fatal car crash that claimed her life in Paris. Former private secretary to Princess Diana, Patrick Jepson, with me right now. Patrick, thank you so much for coming. I know this has got to be very tough for you. I can't believe, first off, it's been 20 years. But what do you think?
Well, it has been 20 years. It's astonishing to think how quickly the time has flown. But what's interesting, Neil, to me, particularly knowing that a lot of your viewers will be business people, is how the Diana brand has persisted as well. You know, the media worldwide is graced with her image again. And I think that's because she developed her own unique brand. And that's what so many of these visual reminders actually underlines. It was a very strong brand. It had, it was simple. She was a dutiful and beautiful princess. It was visual. You only had to look at the picture of her to see what she was doing. And it was consistent. So we are still, even today, 20 years later, able pretty much immediately to associate her with a number of important causes.
You know, I always think, when I remember back, Patrick, to that time of Prince William, Prince Harry having to walk in that funeral procession, and they were really just kids. And I've always wondered in retrospect, why was that put on them? Obviously it was very consoling for the nation and the world, but I pained then watching them, even the tapes of it 20 years later. Who arranged that?
Well, I don't know who had the final say, but certainly it calls to mind, Neil, what an extraordinary few days those were. The mood in London was like nothing I'd ever felt before. And I do know that while I'm sure it was, in fact, Prince Harry has said what an ordeal it was, as a visual symbol of what it meant for the country and for the world at large, I think the fact that those important men and young men in her life made that long trek with her casket was a very, very powerful symbol.
No, no doubt. You know, and obviously you follow her much more closely than I, and you know the ins and outs of royalty. My own impression as a damn Yankee following this was that she was very different, cut from a very different cloth. I always loved the images of her on a water park ride with her sons, or running to them to give them a big old hug. I think it was Prince William who had said, as a grandmother, she'd be doing all the wrong things. And I'm thinking that she humanized the royal family in a way that has even changed the way the royal family is today.
I think that's true. And of course, it's a tricky balancing act for the Windsors because, you know, they're in business not to change. They're a symbol of continuity. So any change has to be incremental. For Diana, actually, her unique style of being royal grew out of being, as she felt it, rejected by her husband, by his family. And so she established herself as an advocate for people who were excluded. So the causes she chose to support were not traditional, and they weren't easy.
No.
They were controversial. Think about AIDS. I went with her to New York in 1989. And the head of the hospital there in Harlem said, this is the first time anybody in public life in America has even mentioned AIDS. So she took on these gritty causes: AIDS, leprosy, addiction, mental illness, domestic abuse, homelessness, and she really poured her heart and soul into them.
Did you know, Patrick, I don't want to, you know, reveal confidences or break those, how sad she was? I mean, the revelations of her husband's affair, and then going public with them, and then the very sordid, you know, soap opera this became. What did you see that maybe we did not?
Well, it was certainly stressful. It was incredibly harrowing, and all played out in public, day after day. It was relentless. And yet, she was not a sad person. She experienced sadness, but I think through her own unhappiness, through her own suffering, she developed an empathy for other people who were unhappy. She used to say to me, I can do this work because I am one of them. She was a princess, but equally she was able to relate to people on an emotional level, That was not traditional
Absolutely.
royal way of doing things. And at the same time, she experienced enormous fulfillment, I think, through seeing what a change she could make using her royal profile.
Patrick, is it your sense that there was talk that Dodi Fayed they were going to marry? We'll never know, and I know it's the stuff of legendary gossip, unsettled probably forever. But were you of that sense that that was a relationship that was headed for the altar?
It's not something I had enough personal experience of to be able to give a reliable opinion, but having worked very, very closely for the princess for 8 years, I would have hoped that she would have continued to surprise us with the work she did for those at the bottom of the heap, and that in her own private life she would find a way to happiness that didn't necessarily involve marrying anybody. She was an extraordinarily accomplished and evolved person by the time she died. And, you know, the places in her own life where she found fulfillment, strength, and inspiration was in her work, not necessarily in her personal relationships.
That is very well put, Patrick. Thank you for taking the time. Patrick Jepson, the former private secretary to Princess Diana, dead 20 years ago today. William Morphy.